Could the Miami Dolphins make a blockbuster trade before the trade deadline on November 5th and go all in this season with Tua Tagovailoa's return on the horizon and the AFC being as weak as it has been in some time? Top-heavy teams are good, but that mid-tier, not so much. There's some trade targets that we're going to talk about on today's show. I am Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. And the two guys that we are going to talk about are as followed. They're both edge rushers. Maxx Crosby, the edge rusher for the Las Vegas Raiders, and then Haason Reddick, the edge rusher for the New York Jets, but has never played for the New York Jets. And before we talk about Crosby, who we'll talk about first here, if the Dolphins ever do make a trade, whether it's for one of these top guys or for a minor guy, we'll have you covered. Make sure you hit that sub button. Join us here at the channel because we're going to have you covered on everything you need surrounding the Miami Dolphins. All right. Could Mad Max be in play for the Fins? Should the Dolphins make a trade for a top edge rusher in the NFL? And some people might think, well, why would they ever trade Maxx Crosby? And I understand that. But it could happen, folks. They traded Davante Adams to the New York Jets on Tuesday, which means could they go sell mode? It's possible. We know that they need a quarterback of the future. And O'Connell and Gardner Minshew are not it. And maybe ownership just decides, well, let's trade our best asset, Maxx Crosby, and get one, maybe even 2 first-round picks back, and then use that ammunition to draft a quarterback or trade for a quarterback. And from Miami's side, on why I think it could happen, his contract is actually extremely affordable. And this man is worth every single penny. He is, in my opinion, the best edge rusher in football right now. He is. Now, you could have a debate on which player is the best defensive player in football, but this guy is as reliable as it comes. He plays in almost every single game. He missed a game a couple weeks ago for the Raiders, and I know it killed him inside. He is a warrior. He is a dominating football presence. He does it in the run game. You see his TFL numbers. You see his sack numbers. He gets after the quarterback. He has been unbelievably productive for the Las Vegas Raiders, and it's made him a top 3 defensive player in football. It's hard to rank which players are the top, but I think he's top 3. The only players that I know are in the top 3 are probably Micah Parsons, probably Maxx Crosby, and then I think Fred Warner as well from San Francisco. He's a top 3 player in football, and I think he is someone that if the Dolphins decide to go all in, would be a good move because it's not even all in just for this season. It would also help them in the future as well, and we'll talk about why that is in just a second. But let me know. Quick little thoughts on the matter. And it's today's pinned comment. So if you get hit with a YouTube ad break, let it play, scroll down and answer today's question. Would you trade for Maxx Crosby? Type T for trade or type P for pass. It's obviously not going to happen this week, and it might not happen at all. Who says the Raiders even want to go down that path? I think it's possible, but there's no guarantee. But if you win this week, you get your record to 3-3 after beating the Indianapolis Colts. You, in my opinion, should go buy mode this upcoming trade deadline on November 5th. You're 3-3. Tua's potentially returning in Week 8 against the Cardinals. That is when you make the push to improve this roster for this year and beyond. And when you think of Maxx Crosby's contract, it's incredibly affordable. In 2024, here it is. But here's the best part, by the way. Like, if you are acquiring Crosby, this contract, it might look scary. It's not that scary. And these 2 years are non-guaranteed. So you could technically get rid of him, even though you wouldn't do that. But his contract is extremely affordable, and when you dive more into the details, it's even better for you. If you acquire him this year, you only acquire $16.8 million. Like, that is pretty good, right? And in 2025, like I mentioned, it's $23 million, non-guaranteed. In 2026, 19.7, non-guaranteed. Like, what else can you ask for in terms of acquiring a player like Maxx Crosby who has that productivity for the contract that he has? Now, the Raiders' dead cap would take a little bit of a hit because they'd be paying some of that contract. But in terms of getting Maxx Crosby, there's nothing more enticing about getting him than the money that you would have to pay him. And some people will be like, oh, my God, you can't trade for Maxx Crosby. You can't pay him. We don't have the money for Maxx Crosby. It's very, very easy to get this done, folks. Bradley Chubb's contract, move on. Move on. It's really that simple. You could make this trade, afford that contract, maybe extend them to help your cap hit this season, and then in this offseason, move on from Bradley Chubb. It's very, very doable for Miami to free up the money to allot money to Maxx Crosby or extend Maxx Crosby. Like, I just think people that will come and say, for the one reason not to trade for Maxx Crosby is the financial aspect of it, clearly don't understand that you can find money in different ways, whether it be moving on from players, whether it be extending void years. There's so many creative ways to create cap space that Bradley Chubb could be gone. Maxx Crosby could be in. Could be the same thing for Haason Reddick. Either way, the idea that there is not enough money to get Maxx Crosby, especially since his cap hit would be under $24-25 million over the next 3 seasons, would just be phenomenal for this team. And a team that needs an edge with Jalen Phillips out for the year and Bradley Chubb's return not really being in the cards anytime soon. All right, we're going to move over to Haason Reddick here in just a second, but make sure you are started with Game Time. And I got to show them some love because they have helped me go to so many live events because they have the lowest price guaranteed. And I'm someone who procrastinates, and I'm able to get them tickets in the last minute guarantee. And when they have that new feature called Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff, shows you only incredible great deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Like, it's the best. And they actually have the lowest price guaranteed so much to where if you find a ticket on a different service for cheaper, well, guess what? Game Time's actually going to credit you 110% of the difference. And my favorite aspect is the fact that you get to see your seat in the app before you buy. Get a full panoramic view, whether it's a comedy show, concert, live event, or live sporting event, doesn't matter. You get to see where you're sitting, so you don't get blindsided by stanchion, scoreboard, lights, poles, whatever you're concerned about. You can put that to bed, I should say, with Game Time. So download the app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS. Get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. Shout out to Game Time. That link is in the description and comments of today's show. What time is it? It is game time. All right, let's move on here to the other guy we mentioned off the top, Haason Reddick. Could he be someone the Miami Dolphins trade? And I know most of you are going to be saying, well, hasn't he been on the trade market for a while? Yes, but I think we've officially picked up steam here because Diana Rossini put this out into the world this morning before the Davante Adams trade. The Jets have given Haason Reddick and his reps a short window to seek a trade per sources. His new representation, Drew Rosenhaus, has been reaching out to teams over the last 12 hours to gauge interest. Why that's important? Drew Rosenhaus. You know who else he reps? Tyreek Hill and a lot of other Miami Dolphins. And they have a really good working relationship. So I think there's something to where maybe Haason Reddick could find himself going on the way to Miami and could possibly make the case. And that switch at agency is important. There's also something else that's very important in my eyes is that it's this idea of the, I guess, what's the pick? Conditional pick. I was spacing on that name here. Because guess what, folks? If the Jets ultimately trade Haason Reddick to an NFC team, they have to trade a second-round pick to Philly due to that original pick. That's part one of the conditions. If he gets traded to an NFC team, that's a second-round pick going to Philly. So it actually is important for New York to try to keep him in the AFC so they don't have to fork over a second-round pick to Philadelphia. So would they sacrifice sending him to Miami in order to not have to fork over a second-round pick to Philly? I think it's very possible. And he's only 3 years older than Maxx Crosby when you compare the two players. His contract is in the final year of that 3-year, $45 million contract, and it's non-guaranteed. And he wants a new contract extension. Well, like I said with Maxx Crosby, or to me, yes, Maxx Crosby, you can move on from Bradley Chubb, free up $20 million cap space, and allot that to Haason Reddick in an extension. It makes a lot of sense for Haason Reddick to potentially be the actual guy that Miami goes out and acquires if they deem an edge rusher to be necessary. And he has been one of the most productive guys in all of football over the past 4 seasons, going from Arizona to Carolina to the Philadelphia Eagles. He just consistently puts up numbers and is actually 6th in the National Football League in sacks over the last 4 seasons, only behind TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons, Trey Hendrickson. He is so dang effective at everything he does. Is he as good as a run stopper as Maxx Crosby and some of these other guys like TJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson, Micah Parsons? Probably not, but he is right up there with some of the best players in the National Football League in terms of getting after the passer and would elevate this Dolphins pass rush to a different level. You have him, you have Emmanuel Ogbah, you have Zach Sealer, Calais Campbell, Chop Robinson, and then Bradley Chubb coming into the fold. Oh, yeah, you're going to be getting after opposing quarterbacks all day long. So if you do want to trade for an edge, which one would you rather trade for? Type MC for Maxx Crosby, type HR for Haason Reddick. Let me know which edge rusher wants or intrigues you the most. I do think Reddick makes sense because he'd be relatively cheaper. What do I mean by that? Well, he'd be cheaper for a contract, one. And two, he would be a lot more cheaper in a trade. Like, Maxx Crosby would require likely multiple first-round picks. Like, Raiders fans are delusional at times, and our host Mitchell Renz sometimes boosts Raiders players in general. But it would legitimately cost you 2 first-round picks probably to get Maxx Crosby. That's how good he is. He's 27. He's not even entering his prime yet, and he's already a top 3, top 5 defensive player in football. So it would cost you less in a trade to get Haason Reddick. And like I mentioned, the Jets may actually want to trade Reddick in the AFC to save a top trade or a top asset in terms of a second-round pick going to the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think Reddick coming to an AFC team is very much on the cards, and I think could be an option for the Miami Dolphins. Now, that's not me saying that I'd rather have Reddick in a vacuum. It's very obvious that Maxx Crosby is the better player, and I'd rather have him in Miami. But Haason Reddick is probably the more likely option, in my opinion, as well as the cheaper option via trade. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. If you have not been subscribed, I don't know what you're doing. We put out daily content here at the channel. But also, if you're still watching at this point in the video, you obviously like what we're doing here. Hit that sub button, join us, because we bring out daily content.